They got you fighting a culture war to stop you from fighting a class war. Man, this is one of those memes that just contains such profound truth with a simple picture and a few words. Now, whether or not we want to acknowledge it, we've all been living in this aquarium for at least the last 10 years, and it's happened so gradually that we might not have noticed the man standing outside. And what I'm about to say, I present with such self-awareness because I have a whole YouTube channel dedicated to presenting my side of some complex issues. But what if I told you that a lot of these issues didn't come about organically, and that they were put here to intentionally divide us? Let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Make sure you smash the like button on your way in and leave me a comment on your way out and join the conversation. And if it's your first time here, make sure you're subscribed and you hit the notification bell. It doesn't matter when you were born or how old you are. Every single generation that has ever existed tends to look back at the time that they were young and the time they came of age with such nostalgia and with rose-colored glasses. I was born in the 1980s, and I look back fondly on the 1990s and the early 2000s, and I truly believe that it was the best time ever, and things haven't been the same since. And I'm not just talking about the music or the fact that The Simpsons was still good. No, I'm talking about how people were still able to have civilized political discussions that didn't devolve into this. People have always had disagreements over politics and religion. This is nothing new. And I'm sure we've all had the experience of having a falling out with an old friend, casual acquaintance, or a family member on social media, only to find you've been unfriended. Or even in real life, you could have a conversation that turns sour. But it never used to be this way. And you can blame social media for some of it. It's a big part of the story for sure, and I'm not trying to say that it isn't, because it is. Back in the day, we didn't all have these in our pocket. Constantly reinforcing the idea that everything is terrible and that the world is broken and everything's getting worse. We didn't constantly have notifications going off in our pocket letting us know about the newest catastrophic event that's happening in the news. Now, that's not to say that the early to mid-2000s weren't a turbulent time. We all watched 9/11 play out in real time, and then 2 disastrous wars followed that. And then there was the 2008 financial crisis, and yet people weren't at each other's throats like they are today. But the 2008 financial crisis is a great place to start. This was the first time in modern history that the ruling establishment was facing the very real threat of the left and the right working together against them. Now, obviously, after George Bush's illegal invasion of Iraq, you had massive protests against that, but these were by and large coming from the left, and they were no real threat to the ruling establishment's power. This all changed, though, after the financial crisis of 2008. Now, this post by Being Libertarian sums it up nicely. The Occupy Tea Party movements were squashed by injecting culture war into the media nonstop. Of course, guys, this really makes sense when you think about it. Honestly, think back to where we were as a culture back in 2008. America had just elected its first black president. Same-sex marriage was being talked about all across multiple states and everywhere in the Western world. It was being endorsed by politicians everywhere. Well, except for Hillary Clinton. She didn't come on board to that till about 2013. But hey, the left doesn't want to talk about that, right? And yet, back then, the media wasn't constantly bombarding everybody with how problematic everything is. But that all changed due to the reaction to the financial crisis, when you had populist movements from the left and the right, which were dangerously close to uniting for a common cause. Now, these groups were diametrically opposed to one another, yet at the time they were still very capable of working together, and they almost were. Now, I'm convinced that if these groups were to attempt the same thing today, they would be fighting each other in the street. And this is all due to the manufactured culture war. Now, what Occupy Wall Street believed was that corporations have too much power. And what the Tea Party believed was that government had too much power. But this Venn diagram perfectly demonstrates how they met in the middle and what the threat to the establishment was. Now, it says here, large corporations lobby for the government to have more power, and in return, the government enacts laws and regulations favorable to large corporations. And this is exactly what they were afraid of, for the masses to realize this. The truth is, the ruling establishment is quite content to watch everybody tear each other apart over issues like race, religion, identity politics, men and women's sports, and abortion. They love it when we argue about that. It's not really a threat to them. But all of a sudden, if you have populist movements on the left and the right uniting and having an honest conversation about how big government and big corporations collude to make themselves richer at the expense of everybody else, that's a problem for them. And I found another meme that sums this up nicely. The serfs are uniting, release the identity politics. Now, this isn't just my opinion. There's real data to back this up. Now, this graph here is the prevalence of the word racists and racism in major American publications. In the blue, you have the New York Times, green Washington Post, gray LA Times, and yellow Wall Street Journal. And you can see that this data is pretty much constant all the way back to 1970, and you have a slight uptick in the 1990s, where, again, things were getting better and more progressive and more accepting for all. But then, all of a sudden, right around the time of the Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party movements, you have it shoot right up to the moon. And this one here is a lot more in depth. So this is the frequency of words denoting prejudice in the New York Times and the Washington Post. You see words related to racism, xenophobia, white supremacy, sexism, misogyny, patriarchy, that's another one that shot right up, gender discrimination, homophobia, transphobia, Islamophobia, and anti-Semitism and bigotry. And one thing you'll notice about this is all of the different terms seem to have their own different patterns right up until, again, the Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party movements. This is not happening organically. This is 100% astroturfed and pushed on us to create division. And of course, this phenomenon is not unique to the United States. Here in Canada, we have the exact same thing going on. You have here the Canadian news media average yearly prevalence of words denoting prejudice, January 1st, 2000, all the way to December 31st, 2021. Now, this aggregates together the Toronto Star, the National Post, the Globe and Mail, the CBC, Vancouver Sun, Ottawa Citizen, Montreal Gazette, Calgary Herald, and the Toronto Sun, and you can see the exact same patterns here. You have racism, racist shooting up right around the time of the Occupy movements, but really ramping up right around 2015 when Justin Trudeau came to power. And you have the same thing with sexism, transphobia, Islamophobia, and of course, all of this coincided with not just the Occupy and the Tea Party movements in the United States, but you'll see our graphs are a little bit different. They take, like anything, Canada takes a couple of years to catch up, but they certainly did with this guy, Justin Trudeau.
That religious charitable organizations have in our legislation so that it can also be changed, because maternal love is the love that's going to change the future of mankind. So we'd like you to look into
we
that.
like to say people kind, not necessarily mankind, because it's more inclusive.
There we go, exactly. Yes, thank you.
We can all learn from each other.
Okay, and if you missed the text there at the bottom of the video, it says, critics accuse the Prime Minister of, quote, mansplaining and making up words. Exactly. Now, Justin Trudeau, of course, went on to use these same divisive tactics in describing another populist movement that was a real threat to their power, the trucker convoy. He conveniently was able to demonize them all as racist misogynists. And make no mistake about it, guys, this tactic was used again because the Freedom Convoy was the left and the right coming together. Don't let anybody tell you any differently. But that's going to be my show for today, guys. Now, I want to know your thoughts down in the comments, and as always, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Johnny from Nova Scotia says thank you. Hey, Johnny from Nouvelle-Écosse, il dit merci, thank you.
Thanks to you. God
Thank you
bless
so
you.
much. Perfect.
We're from Quebec.
Yeah, Quebec.